You have an idea. Let's say it deals with contractors and realtors. If they go talk to 50 people that are going to be their customers, they're going to either one, find out what to change about their idea. Two is they're going to find out if it's valid or invalid. And invalidating an idea is just as important. And three is most likely they're going to find a better idea if they really like that industry.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come to win, we come to fly. This is where we make our dreams come to life. Welcome to Innovation City.
Welcome to Innovation City, a podcast featuring the innovators, disruptors, and creators who are changing the way that business happens. My name is Tyler Kelly. I'm here with my co-host Leanne Buchanan. And today we are coming to you from Slam Agency St. Louis right here in our think tank. And we're super excited because we have with us Mr. Jimmy Hendricks.
Hey, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming.
Yep.
Well, Jimmy, we're super excited to have you, and I'm glad we got a chance to catch up a little bit beforehand.
Sure.
So for our audience to know, you are the manager of Lee Labs, and you're also the founder of Agency Maestro and Little SAAS Factory, Inc. So, Jimmy, before we talk about what you do, want to get to know a little bit more about who you are. And so I think my first question is, what drives you to do the work that you do?
Yeah, different people become entrepreneurs, right? Like I think some people always want to be capitalism or raise money, and most of them usually want to solve a problem or be free. I kind of fell into that freedom model first, where I think early on I just knew I didn't want a job. And all through college, I had a sales job that was independent contractor, so I only had 2 W-2s for like 1 year each in my whole career.
Wow.
I just knew I didn't want to work at a company where I had a job. I just knew I wanted to be free. So I was willing to take the hit of being in my apartment with 7 people and selling all my furniture to start something that was interesting because I want to be free. And I figured money follows because that's usually the case. And later, as I got more mature, I started to find a problem to solve, which I think helped some ideas get more cohesive. But it was always that freedom. I always wanted to be independent, do what I want, work at home, live international, travel when I want, and I'm trying to get to that still, but I've got there.
So I love that you talked about freedom, because a lot of times, as you mentioned, entrepreneurship is something people go into because they think they're going to make a lot of money.
Sure.
They don't realize how much work it actually takes and how little you get back at the beginning.
Yes.
So you've been pretty much an entrepreneur forever. And talk to us about your best personal startup story.
Yes, best. Making money. I think most entrepreneurs will make money eventually. They will take over their history, but it's usually not their first, second, third, fourth, sometimes fifth try. My fondest memory though is when I recruited one of my best friends to start a t-shirt company, but it was online, Threadless, out of Chicago. And the idea was Threadless was these goofy t-shirts where people would submit designs and vote on them. We wanted to do that for fashion. So we called it collar free. And the idea was people would submit designs and they would vote on them. And it was kind of based on Hot or Not, which was A versus B. It was an old dating app that was A versus B. A versus B. And so we used that for t-shirts. But we didn't know how to build a website. Shopify wasn't around. We didn't know how to sell anything retail. So all we did was make cool t-shirts and talk about how we had a startup. But it got us into the space, but it got us going. But it was funny because as we were selling, everyone was excited. They'd come to my house. We had t-shirts everywhere. We threw launch parties. We'd sell into retail. And some of my best friends came from that time. Luckily, we pivoted to where the voting engine ended up selling to Sports Illustrated Kids. So we actually got into software. That's kind of how we got into B2B. We kind of did the opposite of what they tell you to do, which is customer development and find a need. Yeah. We just kind of said, this sounds cool, let's do it. And back-ended into that a few ideas later. But it was fun because my designer would wake me up, when she'd get there at 7, and everyone would be making coffee for everyone. I sold all my furniture in my living room. Everyone was selling our first product. The Collar Free became Artistic Hub. So we always came up with names that kind of relevant. That was our first contesting platform. So it was designed to be a contesting, but it was more not about the idea, but about the fact that a good friend of mine from college was selling with me. We recruited a couple other people to be and there was 7 people in this little 2-bedroom house. A 3-bedroom house. They call it 3-bedroom because one had a closet, but it was really 2 bedrooms in the living room with an in-between room. But that was some of the fun times we ever had, some of the funnest times we've ever had running the business. And even though they weren't profitable at that time, it got us into the market, and anyone who worked with us ended off with better corporate jobs. Like I had a friend go to Indiegogo, another one that's running Disney Plus now. And so it's like they went on to better things because they worked at a startup really early on. And so that was like, made it worth it those days when we didn't make any money.
Money isn't everything, but it seems from listening to your stories that that's where you start to uncover the value of platforms. Like even though the concept was t-shirts, there was hidden inside of the startup the idea that there's a platform that then becomes something you can monetize.
Correct. Yes.
So talk to us a little bit about how you really leverage different platforms over the course of your career, and really just kind of became the master at it, because you've got two really cool ventures that I mentioned at the outset.
Yeah, cool is yes. We're figuring it out. I'd say we're master is not cool. Yes, master no. I would say
humility.
But in 2010, the first platform that kind of opened up our eyes was one of our media clients that was using that contesting platform. Said there's this company called Groupon that's taking away our customers, and could you build us a daily deal platform? And so we built Deal Current Network, which was one of the first white label daily deal platforms. We were literally, I went home for Christmas and I was like, we're almost out of money. We just shut down. I'm gonna go get a job. And then I was like, well, what about this daily deal site? And we came back and go, well, we have 3 or 4 months of runway. Let's build a daily deal platform. Wow. So we spun it up for like 2.5 months, and the programmer who was working on it was like playing World of Warcraft, I found out later. So we were getting really slow at getting a very simple product done. But I hired this other developer, Mike, to come in the last week. I'm like, I need a shopping cart in 5 days. And he came in, and he's actually been with me for 10 years now.
Wow.
Off a Craigslist ad. But it taught us how to build a platform for daily deals. And we literally went from nothing to like the 5 or 6 people in my apartment with no money to 900 inbound leads a month because daily deals blew up. We were one of 20 white label platforms, but a friend at an agency goes, here's how to do on-page SEO. And if there's only 8 or 9 competitors and no one else does it, you become number one. And this is when number one was like still just a few ads above it, and it like blew up our phone, and all of a sudden we raised venture capital and we had all these clients, and it goes, wow, the internet's big and softwares can really scale if you do it right.
Wow. And this all happened in San Diego?
Yeah, this is like 2010, 2015 in San Diego.
So how'd you end up back here in St. Louis?
Well, I grew up here in St. Louis. So I went to Mizzou, got an accounting degree. You know, hindsight, my mom's like, well, if you would have worked 10 years in accounting, you'd have a nice savings, just like a lawyer, right? But it's that freedom, like, you know, I want to drop out my freshman year in college and go to California. They're like, just finish college. Good choice.
Yes.
And accounting was good. But then after Deal Current, kind of the market faded out, and that's how I got into Lee Labs, is I sold off the soft competitors or clients to one of our competitors and software to Lee Labs, or Lee Enterprises, which owns the Post-Dispatch and about 100 other newspapers now. And then I started an agency called Light Post Digital with my old partner and our old team. So we wanted to use our platform experience to franchise digital marketing. And so we built our own platform to manage our whole agency, our own billing solution, our own notes, logins, and that's where Agency Maestro came from, because I eventually rebuilt it to be a SaaS platform for agencies to be more effective. But after 3 years of running an agency, I burned out. It was just, you know, the service side of the business was not where I meant to live. I'm definitely more on the product side, and, you know, and I found that it's the powering. So finding out what you don't want to do is one of the best lessons I've ever learned as an entrepreneur, not what you do want to do, or what you shouldn't do, a lot of people say when you're building a good platform. What shouldn't we do? And what should we do? Is, you know, and I figured a lot of that out. And part of it was coming back, getting older. You know, a couple years ago I moved back. My sister just had her first son, Roman. I take Fridays off and babysit him. So it's being near family, and I was really surprised with St. Louis. I mean, I always tell people it's probably the top 5 startup community, I think, in the U.S. as far as organized, because Venture Cafe is really organized. There's money from the city and you know, groups in town like Arch Grants. So all that coming together, it's made it fun. So that's kind of why I live 3 blocks away from Venture Cafe, and I like this. Like, I also, besides freedom, number 2 is not driving, you know, or keeping it very low key. And so it's been great. I've really enjoyed it, and I never thought I'd love it this much, but it's been great.
So let's talk about St. Louis, because you were in San Diego for 10 years? 14
actually.
Years. Yeah. So you left and came back, and how was everything different?
Well, I mean, it's 2004 when it was just, you know, I graduated college. Startups weren't like the cool thing they are now, or entrepreneurs especially. I mean, they were definitely San Francisco, New York and Boston were still big, but it wasn't like, I think kids these days can think I can be an entrepreneur because once you realize you're not 5'10", if you're not shorter than 5'10", you're not playing most sports, but no matter how good you are, if you have the brain, you can start something.
Yeah.
And that's what's cool. I think it's gonna become the new wave. I think there's like opportunity for that. And the more that's getting down, even to grade school, kids are like learning programming. It's pretty cool. But it was like night and day. Like, I mean, I came back and I was like, we were talking about home or construction and real estate. I was like, I'm going to build a flipping business. That'll be easy. I have some rental properties. Then I'm like, wait, there's this whole tech community down the street, Venture Cafe. The Cortex is really cool. There's all these events, Arch Grants. I went to that gala. I started meeting people, and I'm like, this is really fun. And so there's been so much support, and I think it's that Midwest community where people are willing to share. The thing about San Diego is like people become successful and then they stop hanging out. Or like the startup community gets together for only like incubator stuff or really small stuff. There's no 400 people every single week. Like you have to be like a TechCrunch or Mashable in town to get 400 people in an event. And that doesn't happen in other markets. And so it was nice. It was actually better in that way that I could tap into a community that fit exactly what I love, which is talking about entrepreneurship, helping people out, working together.
I think one of the interesting things you mentioned is part of that sense of community here is that willingness to share what you know, share who you know. And I'd love to kind of pivot a little bit more to talk about Venture School. Sure. Tell us what that is and maybe also why Venture School is so critical to a community like St. Louis.
Yeah, so part of meeting one of your counterparts, Tyler Matthews at Venture Cafe, who runs St. Louis, is last year when I started working with Lee Labs, which I know we'll get to, is like that started in October last year. And I was meeting with everyone in town, like Tyler and other startups. And we sat down and they were like, we're looking for different ideas to help scale Venture Cafe. And I always wanted to start a school because I always thought it'd be great to do once you do actually make a bunch of money to help entrepreneurs. But it's hard without the marketing.
Yes.
And so I was like, hey, have you ever thought about starting a venture school? And literally because Venture Cafe, Venture School, I mean, it was literally that off the cuff.
Perfect fit.
And I'm like, I'll help you write the curriculum as long as you'll run it afterwards. Because I just do it for free. I helped them out and as part of the organization. Because to me, it's like teaching makes you a better student or a better teacher as well. And so I helped kind of organize that curriculum. Venture Cafe does all the marketing. It helps start the community. And for me, it's helped me meet a lot of people. That ended up being a byproduct of it. But it was that always like, kind of like when you have that bucket list of success, like sell a company or start a school was on there. And so I'm kind of like the opportunity. I'm like, well, if you want to do it, I'll do it. And so I helped write the curriculum. Tyler did all the marketing. Venture Cafe has the brand. And it's been really fun. So Venture School is a 12-week program specifically for people who want to do SAAS or some sort of online basis reporting. So we have a guy who's doing like lab testing for craft beer, and we're helping him show up how to build a reporting tool. So you can be like 23andMe for beer testing. Gotcha. Things like that. So it's really software based, mainly because we're staying high tech's really slow. If anything needs to be patented, you should protect your IP until you've been patented. Whereas like software is more about execution and having a good idea. And so it's like if you're building it someone else's, probably it's all about, and there's still so much room. Like you can build a CRM these days and it could be a new one, and if it's good enough, it's still going to get enough traction. Yeah. And so that's the exciting thing. So we're teaching people, and we call it 0 to 1, getting people out of the seat at work. Meaning like, don't quit your job. You don't have to raise a bunch of money. Let's like teach you how to build something on your own dime or for very little money. See if it works. And then if it get to scale or get to where it can at least replace part of your or all of your job income, then quit your job. It's a more practical way to start a business than all in like we did, broke 7 years, have family and friends give you money, because if you don't win, no one wins. That's the problem there.
So it's really helping to think about creating more structure around that side hustle and giving you access to the tools you need to eventually transition your side hustle that may be in technology to becoming your full-time gig.
Correct. Like you can build a platform these days for less than 10 grand if you do it overseas and you use some of the tools out there and you keep it pretty like focused, like a niche. Whereas like we spent 15 or 20 grand on our collar-free branding and our just basic little engine because there was no Shopify, there was no WordPress was just getting off the ground, but it was so custom we couldn't build it on that platform. Whereas now it's like you can find templates for software, you can make it look good from day one, you can use Canva for design, and like it doesn't mean you're going to outsource everything forever, but it gets you to where you can afford to hire. So you're hiring an engineer when you need them, as opposed to hiring an engineer off investment money. And so that's a big part what we teach in that. Then also too is if you don't take investors, you don't
lose your equity.
You're not in any hurry.
Yep.
You don't lose any equity, but there's a right time to take investors. But one is you don't have the stress of them saying win. You don't have the guilt if you'd fail because it's your dime. So there's a lot of things that come into like mental health too for entrepreneurs when they do it themselves.
Yeah.
Or at least prove traction before they raise money.
I can see your personal philosophy around freedom being baked into the concept of venture school. Definitely.
It took me a long time to learn that. I actually taught at Founders Institute, which is based out of San Francisco, for 5 years, and was rated one of the better mentors and globally out of their program. And the big thing, they did an awesome job, but we tweaked things based on not raising money too early. We still teach them to raise money, but not the primary focus. And we didn't make them incorporate C Corps and some of the things right away. We teach them like, look, there's different structures. Let's just get you going. And it's really teaching a way to think versus what to think. Like, here's how to think about it. Because even if the idea they have now isn't successful, I look at it like a framework. Like, once you learn how to look through this lens, you can almost build anything. And I don't know what that's going to be because I'm not the guru. It's just going to teach, but I can teach you how to think. So when you find a really good problem, you can decide if it's worth your time.
Yeah.
So we hear a lot about, it's not necessarily the idea, it's the team. Right. How do you teach that to, somebody that's like, I've got a good idea and I think this really has legs, but how do I find a team that can support me? So
it depends on where you look at it. Yes, if you are just experimenting pre-revenue, got an idea on paper, the team is really important. I think there's a little bit of shift to that, meaning like the team is going to be really important once you find product market fit. And product market fit meaning talk to customers. So a lot of entrepreneurs who are more successful, like there's a reason why you see entrepreneurs who like have one hit and then they call it a single. They sell maybe things for a couple $1 million bucks, and then they sell one for 10, then 50, then $1 billion, or the guys that go billion, because they figured out how to find like really good market fit really early. And then they put the good team around them. I mean, the team follows, but we're teaching really about like, okay, you have an idea. Let's say it deals with contractors and realtors. Because I don't want to go over someone else's idea in the venture school, but let's just say it works with those customers. Well, go talk to them about, would you use this? And go talk to this person and say, what would you use this? And if they go talk to 50 people that are going to be their customers, they're going to either, one, find out what to change about their idea. Two is they're going to find out if it's valid or invalid. And invalidating an idea is just as important. And three is most likely they're going to find a better idea if they really like that industry. Like if I work with contractors and realtors, there's a lot of needs there. People are spinning up ideas all the time. It's the one who goes and talks to a bunch of them, figures out what the good idea is that has traction right away. Then a team, that's when you can freelance and outsource, because the team just needs to be executors more than they need to be like a brain, a think tank. That's when a team really matters, like sciences, patents, like really hard things to solve. Building a reporting tool for X industry, as long as you have product market fit, it's not that complicated. But it's a balance. So we're too early to teach team in this group. We're teaching solo founders how to get product market fit, which they just need a one-page website and the charisma to go out and ask 50 people whether it's a good idea.
There you go.
If they get that, and then they can build a small idea, then they can, we'll help them connect with team long-term or just through networking and stuff. But that's an easy... If you get because the team's not going to join, even if you could pay someone a lot of money, a good team member is not going to join an idea that doesn't have traction. So a good idea solves everything. Revenue technically solves everything. That's what my investor said. But a good idea leads to down that path.
Well, you've dropped so many gems thus far in our conversation. I'm thinking about like hot or not as it relates to the old school website, but literally thinking about like what is hot, what's not in terms of customer validation. You've talked a little bit about knowing what you don't want versus knowing what you do. And then also the idea of freedom being a driver or motivator for entrepreneurship, and even how you think about your strategic approach to scale. So what's probably, for me, I'm wondering what's the biggest, most important lesson you've learned in your entrepreneurial journey thus far?
I've actually learned what I'm teaching, customer development, is by far all my other ideas. Deal Current, we fell into it backwards because it was perfect product market fit, but the flaw there was a fad. Daily deals were a fad because of the economics behind it. Like, there was a 5-year fad, and I was long enough to actually not realize it as much, but when that faucet turned off, it was gone. What I really learned was after that, when we started our agency, Lightpost, we built our own platform. And that was we were the customer. So even though we didn't go out and like interview 100 people, we were the customer. So we built a platform in-house. We knew exactly what we needed. I was like, one is I'm tired of someone going to Google Documents to find passwords. I'm tired of like not knowing where stuff is. If you lose notes on clients, I don't know where they're at. And someone told us the number one reason an agency goes out of business is clients not paying. Because you invoice them, do the work, so you're their credit card company, then they pay, and if they don't pay, and you get a bunch of big clients, they can bankrupt you, or really hurt, or you have to fire someone. So I go, we don't want to fire anyone from client attrition. We don't want to have an accounting team to collect a bunch of checks. And so we built the billing into that. So then our platform became our platform, but it wasn't built to enterprise. And so when I came back to St. Louis 2 years ago, after about a year, and I wanted to rebuild to something, I started, there's still not of platforms. There's a ton of CRMs. You can go do exactly what we do with everything integrated. But out of the box, I wanted to build it to where an agency can go, oh, this speaks to me. I need clients. I need to set up my services. I need to import my logins. I need to put notes for the client. I can put my contracts in here. I can set up auto billing, or I can invoice them by check. I can bill hourly. And so we had the product market fit just sitting there because I was that customer. And that's what I'm excited about, that new platform. But I've also self-funded Agency Maestro. I've done consulting work to pay for my own product. And that's what I learned like 10 years ago. If I would have kept my job at active.com, that's what got me into the internet, making 6 figures at like mid-20s, I could have funded all my stuff and, help promote it. So now I believe in self-funding to a certain point and making sure you have a product that really fits your customer base. So that's by far the 2 biggest things, even though you asked for one.
That's great. That's wonderful advice. You know what time it is?
Nope.
Ding, ding, ding.
It's time for the lightning round.
Lightning round. So you've been primed and ready.
Yes.
So first question, what is the last book that you read?
The last book that I read, I have to get in my Audible. Last or favorite? I would say favorite I read is Grit. Race. It was awesome. It's just about a lot of athletes and stuff and what they go through. I think people there's a lot of people that make it to college or even in the NBA genetically from being good, and then there's that next level of the people who work 18 hours a day just like an entrepreneur, and it talked about all the stuff they went through. I think that was awesome.
Yeah, I think that athletes and entrepreneurs have so much similarities and people don't realize. We were just talking about very long days. You don't really notice how much you're working because oftentimes you're working remote, but you also probably enjoy the thrill of building and grinding and going after a particular goal. And there's always a goalpost that keeps moving when you're an entrepreneur.
And athletes are one mistake away from ruining their whole career. One mistake personally if they do something wrong, or one injury, one tear of their meniscus, one thing that literally can take a $30, $50 million a year empire and it could be gone tomorrow. So it's like they have this window.
So they make most of every moment.
Yep.
So what's the first thing you do in the morning when you wake up?
Make sure I don't have any meetings. No, part of freedom is like some days I wake up at 7:30, some days I wake up at 9:30, usually 8 to 9 reasonably, but I try to position myself not to check my email, make some coffee, walk around, look outside, spend 15 minutes offline.
That's smart.
I think just helps you ease into the day. If I don't have meetings till 10, I try to go to the gym for a half hour. That's why I have a gym inside my apartment, so complex, because I go to the second floor, I don't even have to go outside. I'm like, if you can't go to the second floor, you don't need to be working. But usually that's the number one thing. Then I usually work on my own program because my developer is overseas, so I try to do I've learned a lot about self-care too, is if you take care of yourself more, your business will be much more successful. You used to flip it around. If I have a successful business, I'll be able to take care of myself. And that's how you destroy yourself and really can create mental health and anxiety and exhaustion. And so try not to check my email. I look at what I have to do for my stuff because my agency Maestro, I'm like, okay, I got to check a feature. Then I look at my clients and then I go, okay, what do I have going on the rest of the day? And so it's just kind of like a natural habit. which has made me, and I just kind of like work one day at a time. Like what do I have today? Not worry about tomorrow, you know, and can't do that in everything, but I try not to like worry about what next month's going to be like. And we have a lot going on in the world today, but it's just like, that's what I encourage is like, just if you get today done and you get through today, you're going to have a good week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a great value in being present. And I think the way that you've set up your personal cadence definitely demonstrates like being present in that day is the most important thing. I think my quick lightning round question for you is, what's the kindest thing someone has ever done for you?
The kindest thing. I think it's my stepfather. When we first started our business, he gave us 2 angel checks right away, and I knew it was really hard for them to do that, or it was like not in their risk profile, where everything's going to company 401k, and the fact that they supported us to do that, me and my business partners, to like help us, was a nice statement. And I asked him one day, I go, why'd you do that? He goes, I just knew it was what you wanted to do, and it's to support you, and I knew it was risky. Because I always carried this weight of like our business, that first business didn't succeed, so we didn't get a return to our investors. And it was the fact, probably the kindest thing is actually telling us that it didn't matter and letting us know that they were taking the risk with us. So that took that burden off. So it was nice to have the money. Actually, the nicest thing now that I think about it was the relief of knowing that they knew they were investing in risk and being mature about it. And also it really helped understand that we're working towards something. You know, and it's part of entrepreneurship is there's a lot of people that want to invest in entrepreneurs because someone invested in them.
Yeah.
So I think and I take that with all the angels and family and friends, is everyone who took a chance in us is the nicest thing that anyone's ever done. Because otherwise I couldn't impact people today, like venture school, because someone took a risk on us early on.
So you're certainly paying it forward. Last question. You ready with the last question?
Let's do it. So what is your superpower?
I love this one.
Well, it's not playing the guitar. Thank you for no. The number one question I get all the time. I think the best superpower I've learned to do is help connect with people when they're stressed out, because I've been there for so long. Like sometimes I can be like, okay, they're stressed, they want to talk to you and they're nervous about it. I can be like, hey, Tyler, I know you're stressed about, not working on this project anymore. It's okay. And then I can alleviate that conflict, and then we can figure out a solution. But I guess then my superpower is optimism, because I really don't get upset and I really don't worry about much anymore. I've learned that, because that's what I had before I started my business. I'm like, that's what I want again. That with freedom is just like, it's all going to work out. One way or the other, it's going to work out.
So, Jimmy, how can people get in touch with you, and where can they find you online?
Yeah, and I know we didn't talk much about Lee Labs. It doesn't matter. Lee Labs is really the innovation lab for a public media company called Lee Enterprises. So the best place to get a hold of me is jimmy@leelabs.media. You can find my email on the website. And any startup or any tech that wants to consider working with media as a reseller, or think that they could have a great product for newspapers or any publishers, I'd be happy to talk to them as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Innovation City. If you like this episode, you can find more episodes at innovationcity.co or anywhere where you watch or listen to podcasts. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and we'll see you next week.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die.